Hello, my name is Adam. I am the CEO of GFAM. Well, maybe not CEO. I'm just a guy. I'm
You've
just a guy
promoted
building a thing.
yourself.
And I've got Andrew here, who is the CEO of the Koinos group, making a super excellent blockchain. So, Andrew, I was chatting to you offline, telling you about this experience that I had on the weekend, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. So I'm in America, but I've got a couple of different bank accounts in Australia. And what I was doing was transferring money between one and another bank account. And it happened instantly. Like I had the two screens up and I like within a second, that money went across. So as part of being in the crypto space, one of the things that I've always talked about is the speed of transactions. XRP, Steem it, Hive, all happens within 3 seconds. Koinos is going to be super, super quick. But if I can just transfer money almost instantly, does crypto kind of lose that edge and that value add? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think it also ties into the discussion of transactions per second,
Yeah.
which there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation around this metric that is not nearly as important as people are led to believe.
Are you
Uh,
saying that Koinos won't be doing 10 trillion transactions a second? God damn
Not 1 trillion. Yeah, just 1 trillion. Uh, um, but to answer your question, um, so I think the key question is so first of all, let me state my belief as far as the future of the economy goes, which is that there will always be a place for both centralized and decentralized solutions.
Yeah.
And the fundamental distinction will usually come down to centralized solutions will be probably faster and probably cheaper,
Yeah.
but you'll be relying on these trusted intermediaries like banks.
And
I
probably a
don't
little bit more
know.
protection as well. Like if I'm thinking of like Amex or whatever, like they offer a lot of protection, but also they can just cut you down whenever they want. So, pros and cons.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're going to see the nature of centralized solutions themselves will change as the decentralized economy matures and progresses. So, for example, what if Amex, Visa, I mean, these companies are already getting involved in blockchain,
Yeah.
you know, they adapt their services so that they are providing more centralized type services that enhance the user experience of your decentralized assets. And I think that's absolutely going to happen. In fact, we will always be existing in this tension between more decentralized solutions and more centralized solutions. And really everything is always going to fall on this spectrum. And you mentioned a couple of blockchains, which I think are pretty illustrative of the point, right? So you could talk about Steem, you can talk about EOS, you can talk about them being fast, you could talk about them being decentralized,
Mm,
but how decentralized are they, right?
yeah.
Because part of what makes those blockchains fast is that they have a limited set of block producers who are producing blocks on a set time interval. And so really it's right, it's they are more centralized solutions, so it's a more nuanced question. Now I think the most important point I'd like to make as far as decentralized solutions is that I'm very confident that we can get decentralized solutions to the speed and user experience that you no longer care about the differences,
Right.
right? There's a certain level of speed that that once you move past it, you get diminishing returns. And so it's not necessarily the case that you need 0.01 second block times. It's certainly not the case that 0.25 second block times delivers twice the user experience as a 0.5 second block time. And in fact, it's really not the case that a 0.5 second block time provides a better user experience than a 3-second block time. This ties into these misunderstandings around transaction throughput. Now, the other important point that I wanted to make on this topic of transactions through centralized solutions is that is it the case that the transaction happened instantly? Because from what I understand, all of these centralized solutions have clearing times. So they say your transaction just went through, but you can't do anything with that money for 2 days.
Right. So did it really? Yeah. It like when I looked into it a little bit more, I saw that it was like powered by Oslo, and so I don't know what Oslo is, but I wonder if that's like another company that's linked the two banks, and so maybe this Oslo company is guaranteeing that I'm a good customer or something. Like there's so much different trust going on that I don't understand how they did it in an instant. But yeah, it might be the case that I can't use that money for 2 days.
Well, so the important thing the important baseline to establish is that all money is entry, or all monies are entries in databases.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's very easy to say that money in that column is going over into that column. In the context of traditional financial institutions, clearing time is really the metric we're wondering. My bet would be that that money that you instantly put into your bank account, you couldn't then send it to another bank account except for some period of time. And this is a fraud prevention measure.
Yeah.
And so it's not a semantic argument about, well, the transfer wasn't really made. It's not about that. It's about it's syncing up the terms that we use. So for example, the term for clearing in blockchain would be something like irreversibility. Irreversibility means your transaction has been included in a block and now that block can't be undone. That's when the transaction really happens. Now, you're sending me a token. I can give you an interface that says you just transferred me the token the moment that you click send.
Yeah.
And there can be a 99% chance that that transaction is going to go through. And in fact, I absolutely think that decentralized applications should take a page out of how existing financial institutions represent things to their users. And you should absolutely say, yeah, you just sent it. You have an intent to send that token. You just sent it. Now it's going to take a little time for it to become irreversible.
Yeah.
And irreversibility in the blockchain space effectively boils down to technology. And as far as timeframes are concerned, it can range. I don't even know if there is like a technical barrier on it, but in Ethereum, in Bitcoin, it might be like 6 blocks deep or whatever, right? So the confirmation time, let's say it takes 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for a block to become irreversible. That is the equivalent of clearing. And so, we can show you that your transfer has been initiated the instant that you initiated it, and it can clear in 15 minutes. And now we can see how, okay, if your banking solution is saying that your transfer your transfer cleared in a day or an hour, that's way worse than a lot of the solutions that you can get in the blockchain space. And so we absolutely can compete on the speed, on the security, on the reliability. I actually think that where centralized solutions are always going to provide a better user experience and provide the majority of values in exactly the place you mentioned, it's going to be in the recoverability,
Yeah.
in the not security per se, because blockchains are highly secure, but a kind of security where if I lose my password, if I,
Yeah. No, I completely
the
agree. Like
user
I'm sure we've
experience of these,
I'm sure
what's
we've
that?
all accidentally sent a token or a currency
Right,
to the wrong person. Like I know I've done
right.
it once and I was very lucky that the person sent it back, but it happens. And so I think those centralized solutions will be like, oh, you made a mistake. All right, we'll help you. Where I guess
Yeah.
currently decentralized solutions are like, hopefully you sent it to someone who's going to be honest.
But this also totally highlights the point, is that the way that centralized solutions can provide that value is by delaying
Mm,
the completion of the transaction. That's how they're able to offer that service, where you tried to send it, it went to the wrong place, you sent it to the wrong place, you did something wrong. Effectively, you
yep.
committed a user error, you were defrauded, you were scammed. um, because we've introduced these layers into the transaction, we can roll them back. We're not talking about insurance. Insurance might be another potential value proposition here,
Yeah.
but we're effectively talking about rolling back transactions. So you can't have it both ways. We can pursue like very fast solutions that enable people to transfer ownership of their digital assets to another person super fast. But if you want to roll that back,
Yeah.
you either have to destroy the whole value proposition of blockchain
Yeah.
or introduce these other layers. And so centralized solutions, I actually think, will always wind up being slower um, in many ways, precisely because they're adding that friction, that layer. That friction and layering isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's what function is it providing in the system? What value is it providing to customers?
So it's so interesting. Like I never thought that I would learn so much about financial systems when I started looking at blockchain technology. Like I've learned
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, me too. You're like, oh, I hate those. These suck. But actually, even being involved in blockchain has, don't tell anybody this, but given me a newfound respect
Right.
for, what we take for granted in terms of established institutions and systems.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It was really interesting coming from Australia to America and basically going backwards with a lot of financial technology. So in Australia, like we had our little pay pass thing where you could just like tap on a register and you'd pay the thing. So if you wanted to go to like the store and just get some milk, like you just tap it and that was it. And so, we were doing that 10 years ago. I come to America and it's all like checks and going to individual websites to pay your bills and all that sort of stuff. Like it was so weird to go backwards, but I now understand because America is so big and there's so many different organizations that need to be trusted, it is a lot more complex and technology finds it really hard to keep up. Where Australia, like there's really only 4 banks. So, like it's a lot easier to trust each other. But yeah, it is weird. Yeah. I'm
Coming to
very
a
excited to
consensus. Well, what's that?
I was going to say I'm very excited to see the future of like what Japan is doing. So it always feels like Japan is like we held America up to be like this technological wonder, and then we arrived and it's like, oh, we're back to using checks. Where I'm sure Japan is like light years ahead.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of another thing that I've been thinking about a lot, with respect to software product development and things like that, which is and scaling, and how what scaling really is about is taking the user experience that you create at the beginning and maintaining that as your system grows. And this is part of the problem that we've seen in the blockchain space, is that so many projects launched with terrible user experiences. Like Ethereum 2.0 is about scaling Ethereum's terrible user experience, you know? And so
Yeah.
you get locked in. You get locked into these decisions. And this is why upgradability is such an important feature that we think you don't hear people talk about enough.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's one thing to develop a system that's great or whatever. But how fast can you update it? How fast can you upgrade it, fix patches, change it into something new, refactor it? How quickly can you just replace it wholesale, you know? And things like microservices, like building on a microservice architecture, right? We can drop in new microservices without impacting anything else, right? Now, if you don't think about that, if you just launch this monolithic architecture, refactoring your entire architecture is going to be a lot harder than refactoring an individual microservice, you know? And so upgradability, like that's the thing, is when I look at the United States and everything that's going on with it, you know, I see a lot in a lot of places. I feel like I see a lot of old systems that weren't designed to be upgraded.
Yeah.
You know, you think about our legal system, you think about our political system. I mean, look at the ballots, you know, and so this is a danger of just age, you know. America is now old. Ethereum is now old.
Yeah.
And as you know, if you're, you know, so as you age, it just becomes harder to change your ways and evolve into a new product. And very few companies are even capable of adapting and totally reinventing themselves, right? What makes Apple such an amazing company is how many times it's been able to reinvent itself over the years.
Yeah.
Most things just die.
Yeah.
Most things, like the way you reinvent yourself is you die and those people go do something else.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And like, I think that's the power of the startup as well, in that they can build something new and fresh that solves a lot of problems and be able to pivot and change where a larger company just can't do that. And so like sometimes it feels like as a startup, like, oh, they have all these resources that I can't possibly match, but I have the speed that they can't get anywhere close to. So, you know,
Right.
yeah.
People underestimate how much work goes into maintaining an existing system.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like all of it. You know, it's like, do I want it to be 99% or do I want it to be 90%? Going into maintaining the system.
Right. Yeah. There's an awesome
and
like Freakonomics podcast about maintenance. And it's like, it's such an interesting topic because no one talks about it. But it's like a lot
not
of our
sexy.
resources just go into maintenance.
It's so hard. And when you look at how many companies fail, how many companies are struggling, how many companies are in decline. I mean, obviously I have no data on this or evidence on this, but to me, I see that and I'm just like, of course they're in decline. They're not able to keep up with their maintenance. You're surprised they're not innovating. What you're not looking at is the fact that they're not even maintaining. They can't even muster the resources to maintain, which has to happen all the time. If you think about it, you built this thing, people are using the shit out of it. It takes X to maintain it and you don't have X.
Yeah.
So what's happening? You're degrading. And so of course you're not innovating. You're trying to keep your head over water. I mean, world's a tough place. It's hard to build successful companies, keep things going, keep people interested and excited, keep people contributing value and stuff. And this is really where I see the potential of blockchain and cryptocurrencies is how can we use these new financial instruments that enable us to have finer grained control over the distribution mechanisms, higher liquidity, lower regulatory burdens to help entrepreneurs and organization leaders, to cover kind of like nonprofit, governmental institutions and things like that, better incentivize people to add value to their institutions. But, you know, to me, it all goes back to what we talked about earlier about mission and values. All you're really doing is tokenizing your mission and values. And if you don't have that problem solved, no technology is going to help you. They can only enhance your options and the tools in your toolbox if you have a great mission, if you have great values that other people share.
There's so much that I'm going to have to unpack here. Thank you very much for talking with me today, Andrew. Always a pleasure. And yeah, I'm going to have to go over this. There's a lot. There's a lot for me to relearn. I hope you have a great week. All right. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.